Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. Welcome to the Pilosopo podcast. I'm your host. My name is Jiggy Jr. And today we're talking to, uh, he works in the office of the Secretary of Climate Change. I didn't know there was a position in Malacanang with that name, the Secretary of Climate Change. He works in that office. My good friend Ludwig Federigan. Good day, Ludwig, sir.
Magandang hapon sa iyo, Jiggy. Magandang hapon sa iyong mga viewers for this particular episode.
Thank you so much, Ludwig, and happy Earth Day.
Oh, happy Earth Day. No? Even if Earth Day was celebrated yesterday, we have to continue greeting everyone happy Earth Day. It has to be every day.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised why Earth Day is just a day. Shouldn't it be every day, right?
Should be every day. I mean, perhaps humanity would realize that it took us 50 years to realize that Earth Day has to be celebrated every day.
Well, yeah, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I think it's
Yes.
yesterday in the today in the Philippines and yesterday in the United States or something like that, right? Or all over the world.
Mm.
Anyway, let's get down to the questions, Ludwig, if you don't mind. Let's cut through the chase. Of course, we cannot discount the fact that everybody is talking about the coronavirus right now. You know, the whole world is engulfed by this pandemic, and everybody's attention is just focused on trying to find a cure, trying to find a remedy, trying to find a vaccine. And everyone, all the scientists, it's all hands on deck. My question for you, Ludwig, sir, is do you think the world will employ the same energy, the same vigor, the same intensity in trying to save humanity from this coronavirus to saving Mother Earth? Do you think we can have the same kind of vigor, intensity?
Well, we've seen that at present with the coronavirus, government response was really very quick. No? Not only in Philippines, but of course in other countries as well. No? And it's not only government. I think the whole of society response to the coronavirus was really very quick. Okay, when we talk of the climate change, we know, and perhaps most of your viewers also know that it's currently happening, but it's a creeping event. Okay, it's present, but the more catastrophic events would happen in the future. Okay, so it's a creeping event, meaning dahan-dahan siyang dumarating, no? So makikita mo yung responding natin parang dahan-dahan din on a per episode basis, no? Which is different from corona, which is very quick kasi mabilisan yung dating ni corona, no? At we were caught by surprise when corona came in, no? Of course, originally from China, now it's all over the world, no? Makikita mo naman yung progression ni corona, China, and then eventually naging epicenter was Europe, specifically Italy. Right now in Italy, I think the cases are going down, they're flattening the curve. Now it is United States where the cases are very high, and they say probably Asia might be the next epicenter of the virus, no? But all government have responded to the virus very quickly, no? Of course, those people who work in the climate movement, no? I mean, this is not the position of the office I represent, no? I would always wish that the way we responded now would be the same way we would respond on the climate issue, no?
When you
In
say
fact, they will not call it a climate issue, they'll call it a climate emergency.
when you say creeping event, sir, you mentioned that climate change is slowly creeping up on us. It's not something that'll happen, at the same time, like a coronavirus would just, flatten the entire nation, entire world, actually. But
Mm.
I think that the effects of climate change are palpable, and I think there are already very uh, uh, obvious signs like more floods, strange weathers, the polar ice caps are melting, and species are dying. It's not evident that the results of our behavior as a species is destroying the planet, and it's indeed changing the climate of the world. It's not creeping because it's already here, it's already upon us, right?
Yes, no. I mean, I agree with you on that point, no. Because, but if you look at it, there are quick events as far as climate change, and there are also slow onset events, no,
Mhm.
on climate change. Like for example, when we talk of course, flooding, let's say massive flooding, may be attributed to climate change, but not 100%. Because remember, there is what we call urbanization or urban planning,
Okay.
before the real flooding would really happen. But let's see, for example, the case of a good topic on sea level rise. No,
Hmm.
Philippines being an archipelago, we might be thinking that we may be exempted from sea level rise. No, but latest studies have shown that the entire country are really affected or are candidates for sea level rise, no? And for example, sea level rise is a slow onset event, meaning dahan-dahan yan mangyayari. Hindi natin yan una nararamdaman ngayon. But eventually, pag dumagsa na yan, then that's the time you would realize it's really there. It's happening, no? Hindi lang natin nakita na anticipate na dahan-dahan pala siyang nagbi-build up before na naging full blown na siya. And then the problem is we only act during that time na pag full blown na siya, no? Which is different from COVID kasi si COVID very fast eh. Mabilis siyang dumaan, no? At dumadaan pa rin hanggang ngayon, no? Ang problema lang kay COVID, hindi natin nakikita, no, hindi siya visible, no, so we would really never know who among the community is infected with the virus, no, and where we would get the virus itself, no. So yun yung I think
Well,
I can
it's
see
similar
the
in a
fact.
sense that you really can't see uh, climate change as well. I mean, you can see it, but it's so slow. The process is so slow that you actually cannot see it develop into a catastrophic event, right? In the same way that a
Yes,
coronavirus
yes.
is an invisible enemy, you can't see it, but it's there. You know that it's there. Ludwig, one of the things that I've always believed in is that one of the reasons why third world nations like ours isn't as vocal, doesn't seem like we care as much as more progressive nations is because of our economic condition. Third world nations, of course, a majority of us here in the Philippines are still living below the poverty line, and we're busy thinking about our next meal. We can't even figure out where to get our next paycheck, let alone trying to save Mother Earth. I mean, that's the last thing in our minds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you on that point of view. Yes, but you
Should
have to remember we have to remember that the number one victims, no, of climate change are actually the marginalized and the most vulnerable sectors of society, no, those coming from poor communities, those in fact women and children, those PWDs or persons with disabilities. No, these are very vulnerable sectors, no. They would really feel the impacts of climate change. Of course, those people who belong to upper middle class of our society, they can always adapt, no, to the potential impacts of climate change. No? But those who do not have the means to adapt, of course, government have to be there to provide the adaptation solutions, no, so that they would be at least survive, no, this particular issue. No?
um, like we said in the beginning of the interview, we're already celebrating our 50th anniversary for Earth Day yesterday, and some parts of the world are celebrating it today. Where are we now in this climate change advocacy? Where are we stemming the tide? Are we slowly changing the way we live as a species that is actually having an effect on the planet, or is it still just business as usual? Because you know what happened, right? When Donald Trump became president, I think he pulled out of the Paris Agreement, right? And easily one of the
Yes,
biggest, if not the biggest polluter in the world, the United States. So that was a big loss to the environmental community. Are we back
yes.
to where we were 5, 10 years ago, or in spite of all the setbacks, we are still gingerly, slowly moving forward?
I would think that we are slowly moving forward. We know that in 2015, all nations, no, around 195 of them, have agreed to adopt what we call the Paris Agreement. No? That's the Paris Agreement on climate change. No? It's the same document that the United States have agreed into. But during that time, the president was Barack Obama. And we know that Donald Trump, if I'm not mistaken, June after he was sworn into office, um, announced the intent to pull out of the Paris Agreement. No? And in that same agreement, it says that the intent to pull out would take effect 3 years after such intention was formalized. No? And if you look at the timeline, that pull out would actually happen after the next presidential election in the United States, the day after the next presidential election. Just try to imagine what will happen by that time in case the Democratic Party in the United States will not win the next presidential election. But setting that aside, I think even if United States are no longer in the Paris Agreement, they still continue to send a negotiating team in the Paris Agreement. But of course, we expect that this negotiating team are not anymore as supportive as the previous negotiating teams. No, but there are a lot more countries who are stepping up for the Paris Agreement. No? We've seen countries in Europe who have stepped up for the Paris Agreement. China have the step up also on their on their commitments. No, now the call on the entire world is really how they would be able to make their their contributions for the Paris Agreement more ambitious. No? And that can be reflected in there is a technical term that they used in the agreement, which is called the NDC, or the Nationally Determined Contributions. Now, these are initiatives done by countries, or commitments by countries that they submit to the UNFCCC, or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That this is the way that they will do how they can minimize their carbon emissions, how they can reduce their carbon emissions. Now, what are the mechanisms or strategies that they are doing or will do so that they will be able to achieve their commitment either by the year 2030 or by the year 2050 or before the end of this century. Okay, so lahat ng bansa required to do that, no? And we know that this year actually is the first year that the Paris Agreement will have to come into its full implementation, no? And each country actually are I don't know whether it's the right term, is obligated to submit their NDC contributions, or NDC, nationally determined contributions, until end of 2019. Okay, in the Philippine part, no, we are still in the process of finalizing our NDCs, or nationally determined contributions. No, I cannot. I cannot talk about it lengthily, although I had the visibility internally how it's being done, but there is no finality yet. What are the final commitments of the Philippines in the Paris Agreement? Okay, during the time of the last administration, of course, there were what we call the INDC, which is called the intentionally national determined contributions. No? Kumbaga, ito yung mga preliminary announcements or preliminary things that Philippines intend to do, okay, at the time. No? So perhaps we have read, or pag ginugol natin yan sa Google, makikita natin that the initial INDC of the Philippines was we intend to reduce our carbon emissions by 70%. That was the initial announcement. Okay, I cannot say right now whether that would still be the same, when the NDC is finalized and it's already out and will be submitted to the UNFCCC. Okay, but I have seen presentations of different government agencies of possible commitments, no, of the country for NDCs. I can say some of them are ambitious,
Okay.
and I can say that some of them are still under final review, no, of their
How many
respective
nations are there who are
department.
part of the Paris Agreement, sir? How many
There
nations?
are, I mean, based on count, that's 195
So
countries,
practically the entire world, except for the United States, right?
practically the entire world.
Except for the United States.
I I think the only country who have not signed, but I think we have to validate. I think the country of Afghanistan.
Okay.
Hmm.
Afghanistan and the United States. Interesting. Two nations who did not sign the Paris Agreement. So this is an agreement between those nations to do what? Can you simplify it for us laymen? What did they agree on?
They agree, of course, the entire agreement is quite long. There are different technical terms that we see in the agreement. But of course, the overarching objective of the agreement is how each country can contribute to lower our carbon emissions.
If we don't do that, if they don't do what they promise, are there penalties? Do they promise certain numbers of whatever, and then if they don't reach that goal, do they get penalized? How does it work? What is the mechanism in which you, a member nation of the Paris Agreement, will obligingly follow those promises? Is there pressure from amongst nations? How does it work?
Well, initially they are called contributions. The Paris Agreement does not set any penalties, no,
Okay.
in any event you fail to comply with your own commitments.
Okay.
Okay, but certain countries can actually include in their trade agreements
Okay.
your commitment to the Paris Agreement. In fact, one of the most vocal countries who are trying to do this was mostly European, no? And initially being campaigned by France, no? That any trade agreement that they will do to any country, no? Whether within EU or any other region of the world, no? Have to show that they are complying or they have made commitments to Paris Agreement.
How important, sir? In this coronavirus epidemic or pandemic, I'm sorry. You don't you see a lot of cooperation amongst nations, right? They're comparing notes. In fact, a closed society like China would traditionally still be closed, but now they've opened up and they've already shared all the information that they know about the virus, and in fact, they've sent people, medical professionals, doctors to, Italy and the Philippines, and sent some donations to other parts of the world for PPEs and all that stuff. So there, you can see there's global cooperation with something like a pandemic. How about climate change, sir? Do you think that we have a similar cooperation between nations? And how important is cooperation between nations if we want to, get this, to where we want it to be?
One, when we talk of climate emergency, it does not only affect one country. We cannot say that only this part of the world should be affected by the impacts of climate change, because none of us can really dictate how the system would operate, no, if there would be catastrophic events already.
Correct.
So given that setting, okay, it is really very important that the entire nation should have global cooperation, no, in addressing the issue, similar to what they are doing right now with the pandemic, no. And foremost to that is like in the pandemic, where they share information, no, where they share data, no. Foremost to that is also sharing what is happening on each respective countries, no, on the devastation being brought about by the climate or the changing climate. No? So sharing of information is clearly very important to everyone, to every country.
But are we getting that? Are we getting global cooperation aside from pockets of resistance in the West, like in the United States and in the Middle East and Afghanistan? Aside from those two nations, you think we are on the right track?
Well, if you look at the cry of the developing world, yes, the cry of the developing world was really to push all developed nations on the same table, on the same agenda, that developed nations to start helping the developing world. Because if you look at it, the developing world really, experience the worst impacts of climate change, no? Especially coming from the global south, no, Philippines, parts of Africa, parts of the South Asia, no. So these are all generating or getting all the not so good impacts of climate
Sir, I
change.
know that scientists all over the world, majority of them at least, agree on the science of climate change, right? But there are still pockets of resistance. There are still some climate change deniers, they call themselves, right? Can you explain to us, sir, in layman's terms again, in the simplest possible way, what exactly is climate change and how is it affecting my world?
Okay, well, basic definition is it is a change of temperature over time, over a period of time, and that is climate. A lot different from weather, because weather is what you see outside, okay? Kumbaga, real time, okay? Yung climate is the change of temperature over time, okay? So over average of time, scientists would say around 25 to 30 years. Doon yun yung lifespan, no, nung sinasabi nilang average, no. And if you look at the entire graph, for example, of the of that change, no, sasabihin nila, in fact, the temperature right now is a lot higher compared to the temperature for the past 800,000 years, no?
Wow.
I think not temperature, but the measurement of carbon emissions in the form of using the unit of what we call ppm, or parts per million, no?
So
Because
what does it mean? What does it mean to my world if the temperature is higher? So what if the
okay,
what does it mean to us?
okay, napakihirap explain yung science side, no?
No, just explain the experience. Talk to me like you talk to me in a bar or in a coffee shop. We'll never be able to do in a long time. But yeah, let's just pretend we have a glass of scotch or a cup of coffee and explain to me, so what if the temperature is getting higher? What does it mean? And the second follow-up question to that is, are we doing that? Is people, humans, Homo sapiens like you and me, actually doing that change in temperature? Those are two questions, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Let us say, for example, a human body would have a regular temperature of what's a regular temperature? 37 degrees,
Yeah.
right?
So
At 37
I get
degrees,
my temperature every day from the police.
you have a regular temperature of 37 degrees,
Something
okay?
like
And when you move up, let's say, for example, 1 degree or 2 degree, in fact, when you reach a temperature of 39, di ba sabi natin convulsion yan.
yeah.
Okay, and then of course, I don't know if somebody have already tried reaching the temperature of 40, no, and if that person would still be alive at that temperature. Okay,
Is
in the
that
planet,
why the weather conditions now are worse than ever because of this change in temperature? Is that what you're saying?
yes, yes. No? Now I will now correlate it to climate, for example. If you read the fine lines of the Paris Agreement, it says there, no, that the initial target, or I mean the target was at 2 degrees. No, I think that's the maximum target. No, 2 degrees. No,
To
but
decrease it by 2
but
degrees.
2 degrees. No, that's the maximum. No, but there is goal, that goal that was pushed forward by the developing world, that we should be targeting 1.5 degrees Celsius, no, as a humanity. No, yung 2 degree, yun yung initial proposal ng developed nations, but eventually it was rephrased. It has to be way below 2 degrees. Okay, I think that is the right term that was used in the text of the Paris Agreement. It has to be way below 2 degrees Celsius. No? So when we do interpret that, for example, when we talk of way below, I mean, for those people working in the climate movement, 1.9 degree is not way below, no, because it's just near 2 degree.
Okay.
So perhaps we can agree that way below would be around 1.5, para at least parang bargain, no? Just the half of the between 1 and 2 is 1.5. No? And we've seen the latest science, what will happen to the world at 1.5 degrees Celsius. No? When that scientific report published in October 2018. Okay, so at 2 degrees, why they set it at way below 2 degrees? Because the emission pathway of humanity is as high as, I think, 4 degrees Celsius, the increase in temperature. In yung pathway, that is where we are going.
If we don't act now, we will increase our temperature of our climate by 4 degrees. Is that what you're suggesting, sir?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But of course, it doesn't apply to every country. Every country would have different increases.
In temperature?
Okay, it doesn't. Yeah, in temperature. Every country would have different increases.
Why is that? Okay. You mentioned earlier that this climate change phenomenon does not spare any nation, and in fact, we should be all in this together. Are you suggesting now, sir, that climate change will have different effects in different nations?
Yes, climate change would have different effects in different nations. Try, for example, try to imagine Philippines. We are a tropical country. So all throughout the year, our temperature, perhaps except Baguio, for example, or the high-level provinces, no? High-altitude provinces, of course, they would have a very, very convenient weather. Like, for example, those in a regular city, no? For example, in Metro Manila, people perhaps wouldn't even really care about climate because the temperature that we have on a daily basis is just the same when we were growing up, when you were growing up. In fact, perhaps Cebu temperature right now, you would say, siguro sabihin mo ngayon mainit, pero mainit na rin dati. Di ba? Pero when we say mainit, wala tayong basihan. Ano ba yung talagang actual temperature? Di ba? Kasi hindi naman natin minimeasure talaga. Hindi naman din natin nakikita in public. There is no public signages that say at this time, this is your temperature. But assuming there is right now, it wasn't there. Let's say 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The only thing we have perception, it's mainit. And generally, Philippines is mainit.
Okay.
Di ba? Generally, Philippines is mainit. But try to imagine with this kind of temperature right now that we have, you add additional, let's say, 3 more degrees. Okay? How do you feel at that level? No? Parang nga sinabi ko kanina, kung ang tao would have a regular 37 degrees Celsius na body temperature, if you add yung regular pathway natin na 4 degrees, di ba? So, mamamatay na yung tao. Technically, di ba?
Yeah.
Pero of course, a 4 degree additional to the world, we cannot say na mamamatay yung mundo, no? Kasi posible yung tao sa mundo mamamatay, pero hindi siguro yung mundo. Diba?
The world will continue to exist with or without us, right?
Yes, the world will continue to exist. Sabi nga nila, the world has been there for 8.5 billion years. No? Earlier than us. Diba?
You know what, sir? It is kind of still nebulous to a lot of people, especially those people that, for example, one of the campaign cries of or campaign speeches of Donald Trump was when he was going to bring back the coal mining jobs, and that's one of the reasons why he pulled out of the Paris Agreement. It was because he wanted to bring back the jobs of the coal miners. You know, these are real people with real needs, with families, and if if you don't have coal mines anymore, which is of course what fossil fuel is from, um, then their families will probably starve, or will not have an income to support their families. So how do you convey the sense of urgency to the world, to the people, to the Filipinos, when it comes to climate change? Do we have what they call environmental refugees here in the Philippines already? What are the clear examples of climate change destroying lives here in the Philippines? So do we have any examples? Because all we see are, you know, the polar ice caps melting, all those things that we see in television. But do we have real life examples here in the Philippines with climate change?
Th- There are a lot. No, you made mention of the term environmental refugees. No, um, when we talk of environmental refugees, perhaps you were pertaining to people movement from one place to another due to environmental causes. No, but in the Philippines, there are massive internal displacement, no, for every extreme weather event that is happening. Every time you would have category 5 typhoons or category 4 typhoons, no, in some other place, especially mountainous part in any place in the Philippines, we would experience people have to move on more safer ground, no?
Okay.
And these are people that we can consider internally displaced people, no? And perhaps short of calling them as environmental refugees, no? But of course, it's very difficult to call them refugees because they are living in the same country,
Mm-hmm.
no? Yung refugee kasi inisip ko, ginagamit siya if you're coming from one country, moving to another country, no? Just like during the Vietnam War, nung nagkaroon ng mga Vietnamese refugees sa
But we
Philippines,
do
no?
have clear examples here in the Philippines. Like what areas of the Philippines, sir?
There are a lot. Like for example, we would experience that when flash floods would happen in Cagayan during Typhoon Sendong. Way back, I think that was 2010 or 2011. I was still in Cebu then, and I have friends from Cagayan who went to Cebu at the time, have to move because of what happened to Cagayan. People that were struck by Typhoon Haiyan in Tacloban in 2013. No, I believe some of them have moved to Cebu on other nearby provinces. Some of them have moved to Manila. I have friends who are in the climate movement who are victims also of Typhoon Haiyan. Okay, we could also say victims, for example, of the Typhoon Pablo that happened in Davao. No, I think this happened in if I'm not mistaken, 2009 or 2010.
Well, typhoons happen all the time
Okay.
here in the Philippines. Have the typhoons here in the Philippines changed their intensity of late, or is this the same thing that happened 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago?
Okay, the number of typhoons in the country, according to Pag-asa, before and now, will never change. Now, if we receive, for example, an average of 20 typhoons in a year, during when I was a kid and during the time you were a kid, it's still the same, no?
Okay.
Even if you would have kids, okay? Out of the 20 typhoons, they say around 65% of those would make landfall,
Okay.
okay? The problem is the intensity of the typhoon, no? Especially the amount of rainfall that it will bring down, no, to our cities and to our communities. No, we have to remember in science that if it is very hot, di ba, pag masyadong mainit ang ating lugar, di ba, mas mabilis nag-evaporate ang tubig galing sa soil, no, at ito'y nag-accumulate sa clouds, di ba? Di ba? So pag nagkaroon ng typhoon, this amount of the vapor pwede niyang ibaksak in the form of rain,
Okay.
no? So etong amount of rainfall is one thing that we have to watch out, no, because ito rin yung magdudulot sa atin massive flooding, especially if our urban areas are not prepared to accept all of this water, no? I don't know in Cebu right now, no, kasi I would remember yung area ng Osmeña Boulevard, no? Pag umulan ng malakas, makikita mo lang yung tubig. Lahat pababa papunta sa may Colon, sa Gaisano Metro. I don't know whether it's the same thing right now,
So
and you would
suffice
see
it to
the entire
say,
Colon Street.
things are getting worse now. The typhoons are getting stronger. The levels of water are getting higher, and so on and so forth.
Yes,
Those
yes, that's true.
clear indications that the climate change is indeed changing the typhoon conditions, the weather systems, not just here in the Philippines, but all over the world.
Yes.
So
Not only here, but try to take note. No? There are climate deniers who
yeah,
would tell you, who would tell us that typhoons is a natural event.
mhm,
It's a natural phenomena.
correct.
And for those in the climate movement, they will not deny that it's a natural event. It's a
Of course.
natural phenomena. No, they will not deny that because that's true. No, that's true. But the problem is climate change drives it more harder.
Okay.
It makes it more intensified. No? So kumbaga si climate change, yung role ni climate change, pang-udyok pa, pandagdag dun sa dun sa natural phenomena or
Mhm.
natural event na na-experience natin.
So what are we going to do about it, sir? I read something a few months ago about how we have already set in motion the wheel of progress that has become unstoppable without us knowing it. Sometimes, or most of the time, we don't even know ourselves. If we are working for let's say a company that builds cars, for example. Their frame of mind is, of course, to give jobs to the people, and to build better cars, and to
Mm-hmm.
make it convenient and affordable to families. So our intentions are there, but the long-term effect of that, for example, in the car industry, just a specific example, but not necessarily just that, is that actually setting in motion progress that has become unstoppable, that we as a species don't even know that we're actually destroying our planet. Is this progress unstoppable, sir? Are we a hopeless case? Is Elon Musk right in looking for another planet to inhabit?
Oh, I don't believe that we are a hopeless case. I still believe that people have the capacity to change their paradigm, to change that particular mindset. Okay. As long as they are ready, as long as they are open, I believe they can change that paradigm, or that mindset. I know it will be a big challenge. It might be costly at first, no? But I think the fruits of these initiatives will bear, no, throughout the end. No? For example, I like your example on the automotive industry. No? Talagang nagkakilala pa tayo sa automotive industry, JG.
Yeah, we love them. I'm a huge. See that's what I mean. Like we don't even know it. It's sometimes it's not our fault because we don't know it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true, no? That's why hindi rin naman natin mababago ang lahat, no, overnight, no. There are no quick solutions to this, no. So there has to be a roadmap how we can do things on the new normal, no, not anymore the old business as usual that we keep on doing things, no. Like for example, of course, for example, for our vehicles, most of our vehicles are still run on diesel. Of course, there are vehicles that are run by electric, but we know it's expensive as of right now in this country, because we know that our energy are still the supply of our energy are still fossil based. No, lahat fossil. Okay, so there has to be a transition as far as energy is concerned. Okay, it is difficult to demand government to make an immediate transition to 100% clean energy, but we can set targets, no, on a per decade basis. For example, that on this decade we have achieved this X% of the clean energy status. On this decade, some form of that kind of planning. No, there has to be a vision to that. No, on all sectors that uses energy. I think there are no sectors that doesn't use energy. No, I think everybody uses energy. No, because we know while we use fossil, and perhaps I cannot say whether fossil still provides the most number of jobs. No, there are also data that creating new energy or clean energy, adapting to renewable, also create a lot of job opportunities, no, for our people. Okay, the only question is whether investments are there, whether there are mechanisms or support coming from government, no, whether they are present there, and whether there are businesses who are willing to invest on clean energy. No, because some of them would say there has to be a demand before I can do the supply. So there has to be a demand before we can embark into that particular business, because we know that if the demand is low, no, it will not be profitable for any business person to go into that business. No? So there has to be a balance. How do we convince a business person to go into RE, no, without even losing money on the X number of years of existence? No, so there has to be an equation for that.
So the
Okay.
government has to be in large part supporting companies that have use recyclable energy, right?
Yes. No. I'm not saying government subsidize, but perhaps they can approach it in the form of taxes. No. Like for example, when we encourage foreign investment in our export processing zone, there are importation of capital equipment are tax free. No, some form of that kind of the government assistance. No, and
You
then of course
Right, go
when
continue.
we convert into having, let's say, electric vehicles, we have to ensure that there is infrastructure available in the market. No, because all of our gasoline stations are all still fossil-based gasoline stations. No, wala pa tayong masyado infrastructure that I can just stop here and do my electric charging. No, so that infrastructure have to be present as well.
You know what, Sir Ludwig? Changing habits is almost impossible. Uh, it could happen, but it's in very slow increments. And there are just habits that are almost impossible to change. We're addicted to fossil fuel, right? I mean, people will
Yes.
not stop driving their cars. People will not stop flying and traveling. We will continue to, use plastic or whatever it is that we wrap our food in. Um, there's a school of thought that is suggesting that what we need is not those small little solutions, although this could help, but it's going to be very slow. What they're saying is we have to build technologies that will siphon the pollution in the air. Big technology that will change the oceans and make it clean again. So somebody's suggesting that what we should do is to build the technologies, create solutions based on all of the things that we know that technology can do, instead of doing these little things that we can to save mothers. What is your take on that? And do we have technologies that are already in development, or perhaps already being used by nations to help save Mother Earth?
If there is one big technology that can address the issue, then I don't think climate is a problem. Okay, if I repeat, if there is one big technology that can address the issue, then the climate change is not a big problem, because that technology can readily address the issue on climate.
There's nothing in the works. There's no laboratory out there in some corner of the world that's developing a machine that'll siphon all the pollution in the air and all that stuff, for example.
If there would be a technology, there is really no change that will happen to our activities.
Okay.
there will really be no change, because we would say, anyway, at the end of the day, there's this technology that will suck all of our emissions. No, so the way of our life will remain the same. No, the number of the carbon emissions you will do on a personal level would remain the same. No, perhaps the number of BMWs of the JK would increase. Di ba?
So
So
there's no known technology that will change.
technology is helpful. Technology is helpful.
I'm
No,
not talking about electric
that
cars or like
yeah.
no more plastic. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about a technology that will probably suck all the pollution in the air, for example, or a technology that will freeze back all the ice that are melting in the North Pole. That sort of thing. Is there technology, or is that kind of technology being developed somewhere out there?
There is one um, there is one concept, they call it geoengineering. Geoengineering,
What is that?
because I think this is a form where remember when Mount Pinatubo erupted in I think 1992. Okay, remember Mount Pinatubo? When Mount Pinatubo erupted, it emitted a big amount of the
Ash.
sulfur,
Yeah,
and sulfur, and then and this sulfur actually slowed down, no, the progression of climate by at least 3 years, no, kasi it cools the entire world.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it cools the entire world, no. So coming from that concept, for example, can we do that? No, influence humanity, influence the entire climate system so that it would cool the world. Okay, and this is the concept behind that geoengineering. I actually asked my professor way back in 2017 when I was in United Kingdom, what is the possibility that we do geoengineering, because I also read about that. No? And this lady professor that I have, no, who happens to be one of the foremost scientists in United Kingdom, is not supportive of that initiative, no? Because una-una, they don't know. They may have seen what are the potential positive effects.
Mhm.
Okay, if humanity would do the intervention in the climate system,
Okay.
but they have not seen what would be the potential negative effects
Mhm.
of this particular solution. So in her case, no, in her case, she's not convinced of that particular solution yet until further studies are done. No? That was way back in 2017. No, I have not been able to follow up. No, this what they call geoengineering. No? But if you look at data, the number one I think that would create more bigger impact is when every nation would really transition their source of energy from fossil waste into clean energy or renewable energy.
Do we have shining examples here in the Philippines, Ludwig? That maybe a region, a city that uses renewable energy. I know that there's a place, I think it's that in Iloilo or in Ilocos, that has a
There is, there is,
lot of
there is.
turbines.
Like, like for example, the entire Negros Island, both the Oriental and Occidental. Okay, some of these their distribution, some of them are run by cooperatives. Okay, they have a high utilization rate of the renewable energy.
Through what?
Uh,
The wind energy?
through through
Waterfalls? What?
geothermal.
Thermal, okay.
Yeah, geothermal, and these are run by well, I'm not plugging this company, no, but these are all run by EDC, or Energy Development Corporation, right now owned by the Lopez family. Okay,
So
remember EDC used to be government owned during the time of Marcos.
where does it come from? Where does the energy come from? From the waterfalls, from wind?
Geothermal,
Okay, so they have,
geothermal at saka steam,
okay,
underground steam. Okay.
okay.
I had that I had that opportunity kasi na nabisita ko yung area na
so
yon.
what is in
No?
Negros that we don't have here in Cebu, for example? Why can't we do the same?
The RE.
The
Well, of course,
geothermal energy from those plants.
I don't know whether Cebu would have any location that is suitable for geothermal.
How about wind energy? I know there are certain places here in the Philippines that use wind energy, right?
Yes, I've seen the wind farm in Pililla here in Laguna.
Okay. How's that?
That also
Is that providing energy to a lot of households?
that supplies the municipality of Pililla, and the excess energy that is generated by that wind farm is sold actually to the grid, no, to the national grid, to the electric national grid.
Because
But all the rest of the municipality are supplied by that wind farm.
there are very promising technologies like solar energy, for example, right? And I think because of
Mhm.
China, prices of solar panels are increasingly getting more affordable, and it's more perhaps feasible to have a solar energy. Of course, there's wind energy. You mentioned geothermal, electric energy. Is the Philippines developing, innovating, or inventing anything to help with the climate change? Do we have like a laboratory here in the Philippines that's trying to develop something of our own?
I mean, technology to address the issue.
Yes, yes,
You are pertaining to that.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, but you're not. I haven't seen any laboratory that perhaps there is, no. Especially if we go into the laboratories of the DOST, Department of Science and Technology. But I am not privy to any of these technologies. No, there are technologies that addresses particular issue, for example, on plastic. No, but whether these are commercialized or on massive scale, I have not seen that. No, I have not seen that in the market. Okay.
You know what, Ludwig? We actually have already found a solution to our environment or climate change problem. It's called coronavirus. Fact, in fact, people are celebrating in some parts of the world. I think in India, they can finally see the Himalayas, right? Because
Yes, I've seen that photo.
because the pollution level is down. So
Yes,
hunkering down, getting locked down is actually a solution of sorts, right? What do you
yes.
think? Regular,
I will not disagree with you.
should we have regular lockdowns? You think
Do we have? Would you? I mean, you're asking me if we should have a regular lockdown
regular lockdowns? Maybe like once a year. Like Earth Day, everybody locks down.
for a month.
No, just for a day.
I
I
mean,
don't.
we cannot see the impact for one day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So 1 month. Yeah, sure.
I mean, but of course, right now we are into a situation where we have no choice.
Mhm.
We simply do not have any choice. No, I think even the governor of Cebu, if she would be given a choice, she wouldn't declare a lockdown
Of course not. Yeah.
because economically it will not be favorable to the province or to every city. Okay, because there is no business activity. So if there are no business activity or less business activity, there would be less taxes that will be generated by government, right? No, but you're correct that we've seen, very clean air. In fact, in Manila, in one of the photos taken by journalist Rafi Tima, kitang-kita na nga daw ang Mount Samat, no, from the building of GMA 7. And Mount Samat is in Bataan, no, which is really very far. I think that's 200 kilometers away, no. In fact, there's another person in social media who shared that from his condominium in Pasay City, he can actually see the windmill in Pililla Laguna, no? Makikita niya talaga, no? Pinakita talaga niya sa photo, no? So it clearly shows how it became very clean, no, as far as our air is concerned, no. And of course, it benefits all of us, no, because air pollution is also a major contributory, no, to respiratory diseases. No? We know that. No? In fact, it kills millions of people globally every year. No? On your proposal to declare a lockdown, well, I wish government would do that. When I was with WWF, yung mga projects namin sa mga Gulf areas, especially yung mga fishing communities, etong mga local governments dito, especially sa Davao Gulf, meron silang moratorium on fishing 3 months a year na bawal ang fishing because they say that you cannot fish all fishes because some of them are still juvenile. Meaning maliliit pa sila na kailangan mong palakihin muna. No? So pinagbabawal yung fishing 3 months a year.
In Davao, is that what you said?
Davao Gulf. Davao Gulf.
Davao.
Gulf.
Okay.
Gulf.
Okay.
In Davao Gulf area, no. So merong ganung initiative, no, yung local government unit doon, no. Well, of course, yung lockdown is something new. Di ba? Perhaps if there would be studies, scientific studies or medical studies na bababa yung mga respiratory diseases pag merong lockdown, siguro that will guide government eventually in the future to declare lockdown, no, on certain time of the year. kasi etong lockdown na to, it only made us realize that there are a lot of work that can be done from home.
Mm-hmm.
Di ba? In fact, on my case, I think I am more busy working from home than going to the office.
Yeah, it saves a lot of energy, right? I mean, like you don't have to drive your car or take a public transport to go to the office and back. So it saves us a lot of fuel. You know what? I'm sorry to say this, Ludwig, but I still feel that the greed is still an unstoppable force. And I still feel that I'm not very optimistic as you in trying to turn things around. Although I totally and completely am with you that we need to do something, I am not sure because this is something just like the coronavirus that all hands has to be on deck. Every single nation in the world has to be cooperating. And I'm not sure if we can do that, if we can muster the numbers to help turn things around. I'm still scared for my children and my children's future on what their planet might look like 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. And we could talk all day, Ludwig, and I'm sure find solutions and all that stuff. But I want you to address two groups of people here, sir. First, I want you to, as a final message to the climate deniers, what do you have to tell them? Climate change deniers.
I think for climate change deniers.
What's your message to them?
Well, at this present time, where we are experiencing this pandemic, I heard less of them. I heard no denier of the COVID pandemic. Not as much as those who deny the climate issue. Okay, my message to them is that I would ask them to read the science. I would ask them to read scientific papers that supports the study on the existence of and reality of the climate change, because in the scientific community it's undeniable. Consensus is 100%, no, if we just look over all scientific studies, no? So I do not know whether the reasons are political or economics, no. I write for a paper in a national broadsheet, and unfortunately one of my co-writers there is a climate change denier. Okay, it is not my intent to change his views, no. Of course, whatever will happen now in the future, whether it would be his time or it would be his children, only time would say whether this issue is real or not.
And how about to the flock, to those that are in our army of those climate change advocates? What is your message to them?
Well, the road to achieve our goal for a sustainable world is still very challenging. No? We still have to push forward a lot of policies for government to initiate. We still have to educate a lot of people on this particular issue. It's very difficult to espouse behavioral change because to change a habit takes X number of the months or even years. It's not easy to change a habit. The challenge for you and me to handle this particular issue remains to be huge. So the marching orders should be just continue the fight, don't back down, because there will still be a lot more that will come our way on this particular issue.
And you think the Philippine government will be out there to help us accomplish those missions that we have?
I believe yes. No, I believe yes. The government is there. The government is aware of the climate change. The next question is how all of these policies will be translated so that people will start acting on uh, on this emergency.
You know what, Ludwig?
So it's
Go ahead, continue, please.
no, so it's a the pandemic that we are seeing right now, makikita natin masyado ng maraming parallelism, no, between pandemic
Exactly, yeah.
and climate. Sobrang dami na inihahambing ang dalawa, no. Maganda din na ihambing sila at least ito isang education para sa lahat, no. At least ang mga tao, mayaman man o mahirap, really magising, no, sa isa pang crisis na harapin natin, no. Hindi man siya kagaya nitong COVID, no, na hindi natin nakikita, pero meron pa tayong isa pang crisis na harapin, no. Posibleng mas malaki pa kay COVID. At kung hindi tayo handa, no, we might be experiencing more daily updates in terms of the number of deaths, no, than now that we're listening to our respective media outfit.
Whew, thank you so much, Ludwig. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jiggy. Maraming salamat sa iyo at sa lahat ng taong makikinig nito.
Before I let you go, Ludwig, we have a lot of people watching this interview, perhaps hunkered down, locked down at home. Give us 3 things that we can do to help save Mother Earth. Just 3 concrete things that we can do right now in our homes, stock. What can we do to help save Mother Earth?
3 things that we can do while at home. Okay? Unang-una, ang isa-suggest ko, since napakarami naman pong oras habang nasa bahay tayo, siguro there is a lot of opportunity to take online courses, no, not necessarily on environment or climate. Kung zero knowledge pa tayo sa climate, siguro isa-suggest ko climate, no, pero marami pong online courses, no, na pwede nating matulungan ang planet Earth, no. Siguro one way is may mga online courses that will influence our food choices, no, in the table, no. Anyway, ang mga Pilipino masarap naman kumain, no. So what are the sustainable options that we have? Okay, we achieve what we want, and also we help the planet, no? We contribute to the health of the planet. So number 1 is
Learn.
of course, education for everybody. Okay. So tatlo, di ba? Sayo mo, tatlo. Pangalawa, siguro very basic, no? When we are in the house, if we lessen our use of energy, no? Because if everybody would lessen the use of energy, like for example in Cebu, of course we are sending a message to our electric distributor, which is VECO there, that they are CV, the demand of electricity among household is less, right? Kasi nagtitipid tayo sa enerhiya. Okay? So syempre, ang end effect no, pag tingnan mo sa supply chain, etong si Iveco would perhaps get also a lesser supply of energy. Okay? So pangalawa is energy, no? We lessen our use of energy as much as possible. On a very sunny day, like for example, where you are right now, napakasinag no ng araw sa likod mo, kitang-kita ko, no?
Exactly.
Di ba? So we make use of the natural light as much as possible, no? And not use our aircon.
Yeah. And last, number 3.
And lastly, pangatlo is sana maging masunurin tayo pagdating sa ating manage na ating mga waste, no? So alam po natin na meron po tayong mga pamamaraan how we can segregate our waste at home, no? Para at least maiparating din po natin sa lokal na sa pamahalaan na panahon na para pag kumolekta ho kayo ng basura, no, hindi lang siguro sa Cebu City yan, but all other LGUs. Sana pag kumolekta rin ho kayo ng basura, sana po segregated din po ang pagkolekta ng basura kung ang mga mamamayan tinuturuan ng sarili nila i-segregate ang mga basura, no? Kasi minsan alam natin ang basura is also a number one issue, no? Sa ating mga localities. Ang nagiging problema, kahit ang tao nagsisegregate ng basura sa kanya-kanyang mga bahay, pero ang nangongolekta ay hindi naman nagsisegregate, we defeat the purpose, no? Na dun sa objective ng lahat ng basura masegregate, no? So
segregate, minimize the use of your air cons and electricity, and number 1, of course, is to educate yourselves. You know, if you don't want to take an online course, maybe watch a lot of National Geographic, a lot of History Channel or whatever, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Kahit sa Netflix, pwede.
Yes. Thank you so much. And indeed, climate change is real, and you know, we can't waste any time. We've got to do something about it right now. And happy Earth Day to you, Ludwig. Federigan, of course, he works in the Office of the Secretary of Climate Change. Thank you so much for all of your time, Ludwig. And I hope to talk to you again, especially when all of this is over. Maybe we can have a cup of coffee and talk about how we can make things a little bit better for all of us. Thank you so much, Ludwig.
Maraming salamat sa iyo, Chiki. Maraming salamat.
And you take care and stay safe, okay?
Yes, likewise. Ikaw rin. No, stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Stay safe and stay sane.
Well, I can't do that. I've been insane all my life. You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.